Hello, my name is
Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Jaden Leary. I'm a junior at St. Louis Park High School.
My name is Finn Barry. I'm a junior at St. Louis Park High School.
And I'm Thomas Halverson, and I'm a junior here at SLP.
I'm Forrest Sendy. I'm a junior at St. Louis Park High School.
And we are joined today by Miss Merkel. Can you please give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jill Merkel. I teach social studies at the high school. I have been here for 9 years.
How'd you get to SLP?
Well, I first taught at Lakeville for a year and South St. Paul for a year. And I lived in Uptown at the time and knew that I really wanted to be in a school district that was like much closer to home. And I really wanted one that was focused on equity and racial equity and was like very much into social justice. And so I kind of like started looking at SLP a year before I actually got a job here and just kept emailing and seeing if they had any openings, and then they did, and I went for it. Oh, yeah.
When did you start here? What was your first year?
My first year was 2015. So yeah, 9 years ago. So I think I was like 25 when I started here. So I've been here for a minute. 34 now.
What college did you go to?
I went to Carleton College in Northfield. Yeah.
Was this your first job out of college, or did I kind of bounce around a little bit?
First job at high school?
Yeah.
Or out of college? Yeah, pretty much. So I went right to teaching. I did like student teaching right after I graduated at Southwest High School, and then did that year at Lakeville, a year at South St. Paul, and then was here. So I have never had another job besides teaching, which is kind of wild. But.
Yeah. Kind of cool experience though. It's like know what you want and then just go for it, and then that's what and that's all you have to like deal with.
It's real. I think there's been times where I'm like feel like the job's really hard and question like, hey, should I try some other stuff? But I feel like in the last like 4 or 5 years I really found my rhythm and been like, this is just the most fun job ever.
Did you always know you were going to be a teacher?
No. I remember in high school, like senior year, being asked what I wanted to do and feeling very much like I had no idea, but answering the question that I really wanted to be a coach. And so now I coach soccer, JV soccer, for the girls, which is like super fun. But that's kind of what I knew I wanted to be involved and like build community and be like with youth and everything. But I didn't love school as a kid, and so I didn't really think about teaching until later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been fun.
What was your high school experience like?
I went to Hopkins High School, so...
Wow.
I know.
Can't believe it.
The colors are better, though. You know, that blue and silver versus, like, looking like Halloween all the time. So, yeah, I went to Hopkins. I grew up in Hopkins, went there K through 12, and was, like, pretty involved in athletics mostly. So I did soccer and track. And, like, it's interesting because it's such a big school where when I, like, graduated, I think watching the people graduate, I knew maybe, like, a third of them. So yeah. St. Louis Park feels a lot smaller to me in that sense.
Yeah, no. I've seen for me that, like, even, like, my freshman year watching people graduate, I knew a whole bunch of that list of names.
Yeah.
And now, like, when, like, we graduate, I feel like I'm going to basically know everyone. And so I feel like it's
so cool.
It's a different kind of community than, like, the bigger schools.
Yeah.
So.
I've been thinking a lot about that. I have a 1-year-old now who's, like, amazing. But I have been thinking a little bit more about, like, what I would want her school experience to be like. And I want her to go whatever school, like, we're living, whatever school district that is. But I think St. Louis Park and, like, smaller feels so much more like a community versus Hopkins and Eden Prairie and Edina just feels so huge to me in that sense.
Mm-hmm. You talked about, like, equity, and that's sort of why you chose St. Louis Park. Mm-hmm. Is that, like, outside of that, what is, like, one thing, and outside of it being a, like, small school, what is, like, one thing you particularly like about SLP High School or the district itself?
I this sounds really cliche, but it's true. I really love the students here, and I would love students wherever I go. Like, I know that I would, but there is something really, really special and cool about St. Louis Park students where it's like, I feel like my job mostly is just to like get out of the way because y'all are like brilliant. And so it's just like, what kind of questions, what kind of things can I have you think about or look at? Because you all are just like so oriented in such like a social justice mindset. You're so thoughtful, you're so critical. You guys are also good at like organizing and being creative. And that I do think is actually like pretty unique to St. Louis Park in what I've seen.
And what class do you teach again?
I teach 2 right now. So I teach I teach IB Americas, which is an 11th grade class, and I have 3 sections of that. And then I teach in the Non-Traditional Academy, or NTA, which is a 12th grade co-taught, kind of like alternative to traditional education within our like traditional system.
So sort of like social studies is like, did you have a particular interest in that growing up, or I guess going through college as well?
You know, I always like really loved English. And then I think I got told in college that I wasn't very good at it. So that was hard. But I really liked my social studies teachers, I think was the big thing. I always had really good social studies teachers. So I feel like that's part of why I'm in this profession. Actually, the curriculum and instruction head who Patrick Duffy was my 10th grade teacher. So like, kind of dope. And he was a phenomenal teacher. So I feel like that kind of was it. And then now that I'm like, I just pretty much chose a subject in order to teach. I didn't really care what the subject was at the time. But now that I do social studies, I think like it is absolutely the thing that I want to be doing. I think that like it's really the study of like humans and how we interact with each other and look at like systems and oppressive systems and how do we think critically through that. And I think that's so important, and especially right now it feels really important.
Yeah.
I think you're right about like social studies teachers having like a particular connection with students.
They have like a really good opinion on how to teach.
Yeah, I
They
think
have like a different kind of mindset.
Like think about like what comes to mind for me when I think about like teachers that come up regularly is like really cool are all social studies teachers, or at least teachers that like align themselves in that regard, even if they don't teach that class.
Because they don't. It's like they teach like when I think of bad teachers, they're teaching like how they would have been taught, like old ways of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But like you look at like Mr. AB, like he's a modern. I wouldn't say modern. I would say
he's a new generation
way.
teacher.
Yeah, he's like a new way of teaching, a new generation.
And this is his second year total. Like a year, not even. He hasn't even been here a full year yet because he came in like halfway through last year, and he's already established such a good connection.
Love him.
Yeah,
love him.
Oh, like Miss Ross.
Yeah, and Miss Ross as well. Miss Ross is a health teacher, and like,
she's also a football player as well.
She's also.
She's so dope.
and she plays like basketball, and she's so cool, and like I feel like she kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, but she has the same vibe as a social studies
she
teacher.
teaches in her class.
They're
She's
just
talking
relevant. And they're like,
She teaches relevant stuff. Like even like, I mean, we probably shouldn't say, I don't know, specifics. I
I don't think it really matters.
Like she'll like bring up like I remember when we were talking about like sex, like she talked about like gender in the same conversation and how it was like a social construct, and I was like, that's insane that she just said that.
Yeah.
And this is a health class, like you wouldn't really expect that to happen. So I mean, Miss Emma's obviously a
Miss Emma.
we didn't even bring her up because everyone knows.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, MVP.
she's the MVP. We
And,
didn't
like, it was her first year, like
2 years ago.
2 years ago, back when it was like
it was our freshman year.
I had her our freshman and sophomore year,
Oh, you had her for both.
and
Same.
and
The dream.
that was her first time teaching, I think, either class, and she like did such a good job, and she's like so like charismatic too,
Yeah.
and like even like now, like I'll still see her in the halls, and she always has like so much energy, and she's like,
That's also like Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller is like
That
one
guy's
of my
amazing.
favorite
Big Miller.
teachers.
He's
too.
amazing.
I feel like this podcast is supposed to be about you, but we keep like talking about the
Yeah,
whole
sorry.
As you should.
social studies like
Yeah.
staff, and
We're
it's
great.
I mean,
It's-
that includes you as well. Like
Yeah.
you're also So
And I think like when you're talking about all those teachers like AB and Ross and Emma and Miller, they're all so relational, you know, like so they all definitely have really different styles of how they show up in the classroom and everything, and what kind of lessons they do, but like they care first about like the kid.
they establish connections with
yeah,
the
that's what.
students, which is something that like over the summer I did YDA. Do you know what that is? Yeah.
Dope.
And one of our research question was student teacher relationships with students.
Oh, it was okay.
Every single one of those names came up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, not Miller because we were sophomores at the time, so we didn't have him. But
Yeah.
like,
But like now he would have.
he would have come up now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Miss Emma came up, Miss Ross came up, Mr. Polk came up.
Mm.
Yeah, like all those names came up during that conversation, and it's because they established connections with their students
And, like,
beyond teaching.
I don't know if like history, social studies kind of subject like is a like easier kind of platform to like reach out with. Like if like if like it like if like that allows you to like talk more about like your students' own viewpoints and like talk more about like
It's a really
how
good
like they
question.
feel and like that as opposed to math and science, which are like hard facts. You know, you have to like 2 + 2 is 4. It doesn't matter like what you think about it.
Like, do you see
So,
that
like-
in your class? Like, do you feel like it is easier to establish a connection with students teaching through like a more social studies lens?
I think so. I mean, it's interesting to think about like, well, is it that like social studies gives that avenue, or is it people that chose to teach social
Almost.
studies?
I feel like it's almost like it's not even like it depends on the class. I feel like it's when the teacher like gets into something. Like Mr. Miller, for example, when he gets talking about a subject, he gets like into it. Like I feel like it's almost
Like
they're
his
just
own passion.
like
Yeah.
they're just really passionate about like what they like. They don't do it just for like the money or any of that. They do it because they like actually enjoy
But
it.
there's not a lot of
Like
money.
Mr. AB, like when I remember we were reading this book and it was about a kid and I think his brother got killed in like gang violence and he was in
Yeah.
this elevator.
Yeah.
I forget what it is. It's like a
I think
long
it's
way
called
down.
Long way down. Yeah. That's
Oh
it.
yeah.
And like he would talk about it in class and he would just be like getting into it.
And I feel like it's like those like English and like social studies are the two classes that like not only allow you to kind of interact with students, but like it like allows for some like feeling and like thought behind it too from the teachers. It's like hard to like get into like derivatives and like, you know, stats.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to like feel connected to like a like historical issue that might have like affected you or your friends or like your ancestors or like something. So I feel like personally I think it's both. I think that the teachers alone are very like I like personally connected with the students and they make an effort to reach out, which is then only made easier through the subject that they chose.
Yeah.
Which I also believe is a big part of why a bunch of them chose to teach that subject, because as you said, like you like picked it a big part. Well, because you kind of like had to. That was the option, but because you had a bunch of really good teachers in those subjects before, and so I think if you see like good teachers in those subjects, it makes you think like I could be that person, or like it like makes you be like what did they do that I could also do, and then it kind of leads you down that path.
And here's the most important question of every podcast:
Oh.
pets or no pets?
Oh, pets.
What kind?
I have 2 dogs.
Breed?
One is like a small, fat golden retriever. He kind of looks like a golden retriever corgi. And then he's actually a golden doodle though. So
Oh, that's cool.
he doesn't look like a poodle, but he has the sassiness of a poodle. And then the other one is just like a lot of different things. He's a rescue, but mostly like got some Great Pyrenees and Bloodhound and all this cool stuff. But he looks also like a golden retriever. Yeah, they're dope, but they're insane. I did not train them at all because it's just not my jam.
Yeah,
so it's good.
Yeah.
Has there been anything in particular while you've been at St. Louis Park that you're proud of? Like either something you've seen in a student or something you've taught or something you've participated in that like you're particularly proud of?
That's such a good question. I feel like I have a lot of different things that I could talk about, which maybe I'll talk about a couple. But NTA, I think, is just like a really, really special, cool space. It's one of the unique spaces where students like apply to be part of it and get to be a part of it through an interview process. It also just feels like a really good like affinity space in a lot of ways, and just a lot of students that have really hated school like really turning around and like loving being there, and they're there for all 4 hours, and that's really cool.
Can you like describe what NTA is?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So NTA is the first, so it's just for seniors, and it's the first 4 hours of the day. So you got math and science are taught together. So there's a math and science teacher down there, Husing and Mark Miller, teach that together, and then Mr. Weber and I teach English and social studies together. So it's always got 2 adults in the room, which is pretty cool too. And then it's the same group of students, so it's 40 students, and they're there the whole time. Which at first kids are like, oh my god, that's such a long time to be here, but then they really, really love it and just like continue to be a part of it. It's like a really cool feeling of community. I think that like so many other places want to be, but just you're not with each other that much, right? Most times you're rotating between 7 different communities, so you can't really do that in that sense. So yeah, that's NGA. And I think like, I don't know, just like lots of stuff with students. I really love coaching soccer. That's been really fun to watch those kids kind of grow and all that stuff. And then just like my own kind of personal point of pride is really like my first few years here, really struggling with like my kind of identity as a teacher, and just finding a lot of like contradiction in how I showed up versus what I believe. And I think that I like kind of had this moment where it's like, I got to either teach the way that I actually believe and show up the ways that I believe, or I got to like quit. And so I like really remember that vividly and really like stuck to this idea of like, yeah, I'm gonna like do all the things that I believe are actually like good teaching, even if it gets me in trouble. And that's been like source of pride and like very revolutionary for me of like the teacher I was 8 years ago here than what I have been the last few years.
What was that like struggle like what did that entail? Was there a moment where you're like I feel like whenever I've had an identity crisis, it was triggered by something. I don't know if it was for you.
Yeah.
But like, or a series of events, but like, that's how it's been for me. Was there anything like that for you?
It was like, yeah, it was a combination. It was the pandemic, so that like added to it. But I mean, if I'm going real deep, go real deep.
Yeah.
All right. I think a lot of it was my own like relationship with my dad, which is kind of funny to be like, how would that affect school? Yeah. But just like when he got really sick, it made me be like, I don't need to believe these things that he made me think I was, right? And so like I think I was carrying those a lot with me into the classroom too. And so just kind of letting that go, and then like really with the pandemic being like, my big thing, just like you guys were talking about, was relationships. So like I would ask kids, you know, like, what sports you playing? What are you doing here? But I didn't really think about the content that much. Yeah. And you can't do that during the pandemic. So I was like, well, how am I going to be a good teacher? And really it was focusing a lot more on like content and them like talking about stuff with each other. like run relationships in that way.
Yeah. You've talked about, being a sport or athlete and like coach now. And you've talked about like your like identity. And so I'm wondering like, how has either a coach from your past or an experience as a coach now kind of like maybe changed how you saw things or like had a big impact on you or like something like that?
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like I had good coaches. I always felt like the relationship with coaches versus teachers was always, like, just felt a lot stronger. So I thought about that a lot. But I think one of the things that, like, also made me really want to be a coach is that I really didn't have any female coaches growing up. And I probably had, like, 50 coaches, like, between all the different sports. Yeah. And so that was like a huge draw for me of being like wanting to be a female coach, because I think that would have meant a lot to me as an athlete too. And I think generally like how I show up and how I talk is very more of a coach in the classroom in a lot of ways than a teacher in that sense. So just kind of natural fit.
Yeah.